And for this one to be made very clear, the role the officers played, even during that time, there's a team we have set to ensure we see, or rather we determine, what is it that made them to be together. Because goons were not even in our briefing. Also, just as said, it was even difficult to realize between the goons and the protesters. Normally, we have what we call the diversionary issues in terms of how people work. We have been seeing goons working, or rather attacking us through what we call the stones. They might have even changed to be using the fimbles in terms of attack. And that's why we are already in what we call a troubled zones. And the troubled zones, once you overreact, the situation becomes more difficult to manage. That's why even you see, there are other people whom we could even arrest. But in terms of an appreciation, arresting them will make the situation to be more worse than how it was. And that is why I'm saying also, our team, which have been made, who have been assembled, are going to investigate who are these goons through the exploration of the photos we are seeing, and who hired them, who made them to be there. And who made them to be there, once you arrest one or two, automatically we are going to interrogate and to get who did so. The other thing you have, the question is the officers. These officers are officers from our commands. One officer is from Kayole Police Division. The other one was from the Kilimani. It was an amalgamated team assembled for purposes of the operations we are having. And that's normally how we work. And that's why even you see, yesterday they were arrested instant, because they were very visible. The goons and the police, we had no relation. Our team, which have been made, who have been assembled, are going to investigate who are these goons through the exploration of the photos we are seeing, and who hired them, who made them to be there. And who made them to be there, once you arrest one or two, automatically we are going to interrogate and to get who did so. When you approach Sakaja as a person, we may not get the information. He will recant. But when we start arresting, that's the time we are going, they will tell us who hired them.
Well, indeed, that's what Nairobi Regional Commissioner had to say in regards to the recent protests that we've had and incidences involving police officers in what has sparked the recent discussion nationally on police brutality and how they've been handling, different cadres of citizens, from protesters to sometimes suspects. The most recent case being that of Albert Ojwang, who unfortunately lost his life in custody of police. And to help me delve into this discussion tonight in studio with me is Nora Mbagathi, the Executive Director, Katiba Institute. We also have Vincent Chahale, who is the country director of the International Justice Movement, I believe. Welcome very much. Welcome to K24. And even as we start our conversation tonight, I'd love to pick your mind, starting from Vincent. Is there a possibility of Kenya seeing an end to police brutality?
Yes, there's a possibility of Kenya seeing an end to police brutality. We just need to put concerted efforts to realize more gains from where we started. From where we started, I'm talking about since 2010, when we got a new constitution and we put in place several reforms. But we have to have political goodwill. We have to have political goodwill. We have to strengthen the National Police Service in terms of accountability. We have to have swift action taken against police officers who abuse their power. And that will obviously cause a lot of deterrence. So we can't kill the hope. We still have hope. Though it seems to me as though we are making 3 steps forward and 2 steps behind, or even 4 steps behind, but we'll keep hope alive. And yes, there's still light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, Nora, do you agree with him?
I fully agree. I think systemically, we really are in a situation where the law and the Constitution allows for, or more than allows, it really orders a system where we have no police brutality, and where in fact the police is serving us and protecting us in the way that they should. The question is really, why is that not the case, and who is preventing that from happening? And why, when that doesn't happen and when we do have police brutality, why is there no accountability? So I fully agree. I think it's definitely possible, and all the parameters are there. We don't need to reinvent the police. We don't need to reinvent the laws around it. We don't need to amend the Constitution to ensure that we don't have police brutality. All the parameters are there. So really the question is, why is that not what is happening? And who can give us the answers of what needs to be done in order that that can happen?
All right. Katiba Institute was part of the police reforms working group. And I believe part of the reforms that we've had or witnessed as a country is we've had the police change shape from what we initially had as the Kenya Police Force to the Kenya Police Service. Is it really a service? Did it transition from where you sit?
Well, it transitioned in that there was a recognition that it should be a service, right? I think actually that change from police force to police service is really crucial, because in a way it also takes a step away from sort of the colonial legacy of what a police force is and who you are exerting that force against. Versus a police service and whom you are in service to. Is that the reality that we're seeing today? Is that the reality that we're seeing on the streets? Is that how people feel about the police? Not necessarily. And I think establishing in the first place a kind of trust that the police is there to serve us is a crucial piece. But yes, we have seen a shift. We have seen a shift in the acknowledgement of what the police is meant to be. Implementing that is another question.
Right, and at the center of police brutality are victims. Now, Vincent, from a point of justice, most of the victims of police brutality end up not getting justice. For example, looking at the most recent report, Missing Voices Africa, that was released for 2024, only about 4 cases were successfully prosecuted. So, is there a hope for justice for victims of police brutality?
There's a hope for justice, but a lot needs to be done. We have several hiccups. Key among them, we have certain laws that have not been fully operationalized. We have the Coroner's Act, which is yet to be fully operationalized. We have the Victim Protections Act, which is also yet to be fully operationalized. The Victim Protections Act, for example, provides for the establishment of a victims fund where victims can get compensation. That is yet to be done. The Victims Protection Board is yet to be fully operationalized. So these hiccups work towards making the wheels of justice turn so slowly for the victims. It doesn't help matters also that it takes so long for the cases to be investigated, prosecuted, and concluded in the courts. Averagely, it takes about 5 to 6 years. Even in cases that have a lot of public pressure, you still find that it takes too long for those cases to be concluded. And obviously that interferes with the evidence, and it interferes with the witnesses and so many other things. So we just need to be more efficient and effective in prosecuting the cases of police abuse, so that we can start seeing a lot of deterrence in those kind of cases.
All right, interesting. You've mentioned something to do with the Victims Fund, and in the country recently we've had a scenario where relatives of the victims are promised compensation, and we will be getting back to that conversation, of course, as we delve into this discussion this evening. But for now, allow me to pass it on to Theo Macharia, who is currently there. Stand by, Theo. What are we asking Kenyans? What are they saying from where you sit?
Thank you so much, David Kagina. That was David Kagina in Studio A with his guest. In Studio B, we have Mumbi Shege also on standby with us too. And right here in Studio C, our dear viewer, it is me and you, ready to sample what it is that you have to say about the current state of affairs in the country. Now, before we kickstart it, The past few weeks have been marked with growing outrage across Kenya. Police brutality has once again taken center stage, fueling fear, anger, and calls for justice. The recent violence meted by the uniformed men on unarmed civilians, it lays a bare disturbing pattern of impunity as families mourn, victims suffer, and the nation demands accountability from those sworn to protect. We are left wondering, is it really utumishi kwa wote or utumishi kwa the chosen few? Once again, dear viewer, tonight we give you the chance to speak out your mind on how you feel about the police and their role in citizen protection. And even so, talk to us and tell us, as a country, how do we end police brutality? Our social media platforms are open. That is Facebook and X at K24TV and also at Kameme TV, or even on WhatsApp at the number scrolling at the bottom of your screen. Tonight we ask you, how do we end police brutality, and also how do you feel about the current state of affairs in the country? And even as you text, as you start tweeting, as you start texting on Facebook and on X, allow me right now to cross over to Mumbi Shege in Studio B with her guests.
And indeed, the killing of Albert Ojwang, the blogger, has sparked quite protests in the country, yesterday. And another shocker when 22-year-old Boniface Kariuki was shot by police in broad daylight. We continue to ask, are Kenyans safe from the men who are supposed to protect them, and how do we end police brutality in Kenya? It's quite a heated debate. We continue the debate tonight on police brutality. 17 people were injured yesterday, including Boniface Kariuki. Keep talking to us on our various social media handles. And with us tonight to help us better delve into this conversation is lawyer Stephen Mbogwa, who is also a council member of LSK. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We also have Philip Generali, who is the organizing secretary of Inject Party. Asante sana, Philip, for being with us here tonight. Tonight, he's also a victim of police brutality. He'll be telling us more on that. But Wakili, let's start from what happened yesterday. Let's talk about, the police officer who allegedly shot Boniface Kariuki, the 22-year-old. I mean, there were cameras around, obviously. He knew he was being captured. What does that say in broad daylight? What does that speak to Kenyans that he did that knowing very well he would be captured?
Thank you very much, Mombi. And first and foremost, I want to salute all Kenyans and all patriots wherever they are following this program, whether online or outside the country. And it is very sad what we witnessed yesterday. And not just yesterday, what we have been seeing in this country, especially when we see men and women in uniform whom we trust and behold that they have a constitutional duty, holding a constitutional office, because police service is a constitutional office, and yet they're supposed to protect life and property. But the same persons, we see them in glare light of the cameras committing atrocities to innocent, unarmed citizens, especially Boniface, who was clearly doing his business in the city, trying to get money, feed for his children or take care of his family or his father. But unfortunately, you could see that the police officer do not care about that. And it's so unfortunate when we see ourselves falling into a space of anarchy, where the persons who are supposed to be bringing law and order are the major perpetrators of the kind of disorganization and the kind of chaos we are witnessing, with a lot of loss of property and loss of lives. And I say this looking back to what transpired way back from last year, June last year. There were so many Kenyans who lost their lives. Hundreds of Kenyans have been maimed, injured as a result of the kind of the brutality being meted on them by the police, while they are exercising their right under the Constitution. Because when we brought in the Constitution 2010, the aspirations of Kenyans was mainly to transform one of the departments, which is the police sector, from police force to a service, where it is people to serve you, to tumishi kwa wote, to ensure that Kenyans can seek help from there. But when you see that Kenyans are being killed at the very cells where we're expecting that they should be safe, then it is something to worry about, because
Right.
now Kenyans don't even know whether to go to
Right.
police or to run away from police.
I think that Kenyans and the police are still stuck on the force. There's still that misunderstanding. It's no longer force, it's service. Why is there such hostility, aggression between Kenyans, citizens, and the police service? Where does that stem from?
I think the biggest problem is we changed the name, and we aspired, through the expression of adopting the new Constitution 2010, that by having a police service in our Constitution, it was a presumption of Kenyans that probably automatically the officers in uniform are going to readjust their mind and realize that we are no longer in the Nyayo era, we are no longer in the dictatorial system.
Right.
We are supposed to be respecting the rule of law, and nobody has a problem with anybody being arrested, because as long as you have serious suspicion or you have information that somebody has committed an offense, it is okay for the police to arrest you. But the moment the police stations become a place which is unsafe for Kenyans, the moment the men and women in uniform become a danger towards Kenyan, so you're seeing Kenyans are arming themselves. We saw yesterday the police guarding goons, thugs. People are known in the city to be robbing people. People were seen robbing shops. Even the men in uniform were robbing. So such kind of persons, automatically they have lost the grace and the legitimacy
Right.
from the people. And that is why you see that Kenyans are now preparing to face the police and fight with them, which should not be the case.
Okay, and
So
we'll
I think
get
is-
to the training in just a little bit, as well as the Kriegler report and its recommendations.
Yes, very much.
But before we do that, let's get to Philip. You took part in the protest yesterday. You also took part in the Saba Saba protest, as well as the June 25th of last year. Tell us about, there's one incident that happened to you where you couldn't walk. What happened?
Okay, thank you for having me tonight. And first of all, quick recovery to our fellow comrades who got injured yesterday. All will be well. So first of all, what happened on Saba Saba to me was the worst. We were on the streets protesting against the high cost of living. We are crying because our education system is bleeding. Our health sector is bleeding. Every sector of this part of the country is bleeding. And the most painful part is that our government is holding the knife. Why am I saying this? The Constitution of Kenya 2010 is one that is hailed as the best in Africa.
Right.
Because it guarantees freedom of expression, freedom of assembling, and the right to life. But today, as we are speaking, we have police officers. We no longer have police service. But if it is police service, then they are serving just the politicians, some people. Because that day what happened, we were just peacefully demonstrating. The only thing that I heard was a placard and my voice. But then some 2 police officers came. Let me just say I was lucky because they never came with the guns, but they came with rungus. I was hit on both of my legs. I could not walk. I was rushed to Bliss Hospital there in Archives. It was so traumatizing. And even after I was taken to the hospital, they again came to the hospital.
They followed you
They
to the
followed
hospital.
me to the hospital, and they demanded that we want generally, and they tear gassed the hospitals where we, the people who are injured, were brought in. Just imagine the picture. You have been injured, you are rushed to the hospital, but still the police officers are following you inside there. So it was very painful. And what happened yesterday, I am not sorry to say this, but we don't have a government. We don't have police officers. And what is happening is not coincident. This is strategy. It is planned. It is policy. The police officers are following orders from some cowards in suits that we call the politicians, people that we elected to represent us. In example, we have Sakaja, the governor of Nairobi County. Yesterday, he brought goons to the street These are people that are afraid, they are allergic to accountability. They are allergic to answer to the questions, things that we are demanding for. We are not asking for a lot. How can you call a peaceful protester who has just come to demonstrate because we want justice for our fellow comrade who died in police custody? Instead of giving us answers, instead of serving us justice, you respond with bullets. You choke us with tear gas. Just imagine how painful it is. And then when they are there, they say that we are the criminals. Between us and the government who are giving orders to the police to shoot, who are the criminals? Who are the people who should be behind bars? It is them, not us. When we go to the streets, we don't go there because we hate our country.
Right.
But we go there because we love our country to an extent that we cannot keep quiet. That is the reason why we are going.
Wakili, and I know LSK spoke on that today, the goons infiltrating the protests yesterday. But earlier this evening, Nairobi police boss George Seda denied allegations of any collaboration between the police and the goons in infiltrating the protests. What do you say to that?
Maybe you should first tell us why the men in uniform, or whether they have arrested them, because there are cameras and pictures of those persons being shared everywhere. So the first question should be, what action have they taken? What have they done if they were not involved? Because it is more than 24 hours since we last witnessed what happened yesterday. Secondly, there were clear cameras showing the police officers carrying, escorting these men not in plain clothes, carrying rungus and brutally assaulting people. One of our members, an advocate, Ken Ochieng, was a victim of what happened. He witnessed the police escort the goons to ensure they rained terror in the street of Nairobi. So there is no way. And these shenanigans and lies of the police bosses coming to manage the politics, they need to know that we are no longer in that era where they used to play these jokes with our parents. Those jokes may have worked better some years back, but now we're in a woke generation. People who have records, people who have live recordings, the media personnel who are in the ground when we saw police officer pull triggers, the video recordings have been shared, where we saw men in uniform carrying laptops and computers from shops in the city. So I don't understand what kind of these things we are seeing, well, these theatrics the police boss are trying to pull, and they are the same. We saw the police officers even wearing masks and hiding their faces, yet there is a court order. So before he comes to lecture us on what the police did not do, he should first be accountable on what the police failed to do in terms of respecting the rule of law, respecting the constitution when discharging their mandate, and misbehaving in the line of duty. And therefore, they should not be covering up. Instead, if they are honest, they should be arresting persons who are involved, the individual officers who committed these atrocities, and hold them accountable.
He did mention that they have been arrested.
They have only arrested the two gentlemen who Kenyans have raised a lot of noise about because of how they shot individuals. But those are not the only people who are involved in committing atrocity in the city. We have so many police officers who are hitting and maiming young people. Yesterday we had visited some of the victims in Kenyatta Hospital, and there were young people shot in the legs, others in the hands, others have been injured by the canisters, the tear gas canisters. So the police, the Kenya Police Service has lost legitimacy with the people, and I think they have a duty, a lot of it.
Do you think they would have taken responsibility or accountability if that incident was not captured on camera? Or would we still be wondering who killed or not killed, who shot?
Unfortunately, if they wouldn't have done so, because initially the first statement that was released yesterday was a very ambiguous statement. It did not capture the details of the officers involved until we started asking for it. We started demanding for more comprehensive information. We were expecting those officers, if we were arrested yesterday, at least to be presented before a court of law within the 24 hours. Today was the first day they should have been taken to court, or some action taken. Nothing. No information to show the genuinity and the sincerity from the police department. And this is what we need to ensure we stop as a country. Because the kind of things we are seeing as a country and the kind of misbehavior we are seeing these officers doing, I do agree with my colleague that these persons are behaving in a manner that appears to be an order from above, as he's told us. Someone is ordering them to do so, and someone is protecting them to do so, and that's why they have no fear or shyness to protect goons who are terrorizing Kenyans, who are terrorizing businesses. Many people's property was stolen and destroyed. We saw some goons recording a video clip which has been shared very widely, claiming that they have instruction by the governor to rain terror among Nairobians. So what action have they taken? None. So it is a very hypocritical statement which does not in any way bring or quell the concerns that we have as Kenya. All
right. Thank you so much, Wakili. We're going to be getting back here soon, but before we do that, let me give a chance to my colleague David Kagina on the other side to just get more views on the issue, police brutality.
Kenya oftentimes do not react until the international community has actually taken some sense of action or raised concern on some matters. And so in the case that follows the protest, we had the coalition of European embassies in Nairobi, including the UK, Finland, Netherlands, and Norway, issuing a coordinated statement condemning the violence. And just to quote the statement that they gave, they say, "We are deeply disturbed by violence against unarmed civilians and protesters yesterday. We urge a swift, independent, and transparent investigation into the actions of the police." I'll repeat the line. "We urge a swift, independent, and transparent investigation into the actions of the police." And now I'll turn to Vincent Chahale, the country director of International Justice Mission. When the statement speaks of a swift, independent, and transparent investigation in the current context, is that achievable?
That is achievable. However, we should put in mind that most of the times when we see swift action, like perhaps you've seen in the past 2 or so days, is only when there is a lot of social demand. But that should not be the case. We should have swift action in each and every case. And so the policing system and the policing oversight system should put in place mechanisms that can assure Kenyans that even when a matter is not a matter of public notoriety, we still have that swiftness. But secondly, the swiftness should not just be at the point of investigations or at the point of arraigning individuals in court, but the swiftness should be, more importantly, in the execution of the whole process, the whole court process, until there is a conviction and sentencing. Because if there is a lot of swiftness at the point of investigations, and then the case drags on for years on end before we get a conviction, then it causes a lot of fatigue. So we should look at swiftness in terms of the whole process, the case going through the whole criminal justice system, and not just swiftness at the point of investigations.
Often at times we've had cases that get to the office of the ODPP and are thrown out. The primary reason usually is there was not enough or sufficient evidence to prosecute the case. And that has been the case in most of the cases of police brutality. Now, how does that stand in the way of justice?
It does stand in the way of justice in the sense that it puts the citizenry in a situation where they do not know which institution to trust. In most of those cases, you find that they have been forwarded to the ODPP by IPOA, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, which also has lawyers and investigators. And according to IPOA, in such instances, they see like they have sufficient evidence to have that case prosecuted. And when it goes to the other end, it comes back for maybe lack of sufficient evidence. So it creates a trust deficit with the citizenry, and it brings about emotions, because the citizens want to see those cases go through the whole process. So I may not speak for those institutions, but from a third party's view, if at least one organization that also has competent lawyers and investigators is of the opinion that a matter has sufficient evidence to go to prosecution, and another organization denies that, it creates a lot of trust deficits, which is not good for faith in the accountability system.
All right, Nora, Vincent has raised an issue, of organizations doing their own research and investigations and being confident that this case will hold water, only to be told that the evidence is not sufficient. Do you think giving prosecutorial powers to such institutions will be a solution?
I don't think it should be necessary to give prosecutorial powers to such institutions. It's, again, really about using the systems as they exist and how they've been designed. I think there's been a very clear court order in a case that was joined by Katiba Institute but was brought by Kituo cha Sheria and Haki Africa, saying that IPOA is responsible and has the sole responsibility for investigating in such situations, for investigating in instances where there have been allegations of a death, for example, in the police context, whereas that use of force. Again, we have clear frameworks. If the systems were working as they should, it would not be necessary. And I think, as Vincent has correctly identified, and as he said, there are investigations, then that is transferred, and that should lead somewhere, right? If there is a breakdown between an investigation and that investigation leading to accountability, and if that breakdown is systemic, then I think we need to take a closer look at that. And maybe we need to then ask ourselves, does something need to change? But at this point, we first need the system to work correctly in order for us to then assess whether something needs to change. We can't have a system that is failing us, a system that is breaking down at multiple points, and then say, based on this broken down system, we need to change things. I think we can use the systems that are in place, but we need them to function properly.
All right, and from where you speak, we're speaking as though if situations were ideal, if actually every institution was performing its role. But as we speak, we've witnessed, for example, blatant disregard of court orders, including one last year made by the High Court demanding that police officers should actually not be masked, and they should also be having their service numbers on the streets. But these are court orders that are totally ignored. From where we sit now as a country, with disregard of law and existing institutions, is there a way out?
Again, I think there is a way out if there is a willingness. And I really have to say I am inspired seeing how people are pushing for accountability, how people are demanding that willingness for proper institutions and for proper procedures. Because the lacking implementation of judgments across the board, by the way, not just when it comes to security forces or those issues, when it comes to a range of human rights issues, we see a lacking enforcement of judgments. That does not mean, again, if we changed the system, if we said now someone else is responsible for prosecuting, someone else is responsible for policing, someone else is responsible for, presumably that would still not work, right? It's not that it's not that there isn't a functionality or that it can't work in theory. It's that there's an unwillingness. And so there seems to be a lot of pressure at the moment to create that willingness. There seems to be a response to what we're seeing in the streets. And so I would hope that in fact we can find our way there, and that we can find our way back there. And no, the system does not have to be ideal. I think there is no system in the world that is ideal. I think we'll always see issues, we'll always see some systemic problems, we'll always see ad hoc instances where justice isn't delivered in the way that it should be. But that should really be the exception. It shouldn't be the rule, and it shouldn't be that we consistently have to demand answers, repeatedly ask the same questions, and still be, just drip-fed information that leads to that eventual accountability. That just isn't right.
Right, and Vincent, in the context of Kenya especially, we have most cases of police brutality reported during demonstrations against police brutality. The irony of it. But my question would be, does the state have a responsibility, besides the National Police Service, in terms of regulating or controlling and protecting the protesters?
Certainly, the state has a responsibility. Actually, the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Interior, has the responsibility of giving policy directives. And recently we saw him issue some policy directives. So the state has the primary responsibility of protecting its citizens. And the government institutions are just agencies that the state uses to protect its citizens. So it squarely falls upon the state. And we have had so many recommendations with regard to how we can revitalize our policing system. We've had the Ransley report, we've had the Wako report, we've had the Kriegler report, we've had the Maraga report. I mean, there are so many policies, and we have so much on paper, and we have so much in our statutes. The question is, why is there still an issue of legitimacy? Why is the public not trusting the law enforcement agencies? Why are we still having the things we are seeing like yesterday and in the recent past? Why are we not translating what is on paper to practice? That is where the Achilles heel is, and the state must make concrete decisions in terms of implementing the already robust and numerous policies and laws that we have in terms of the policing system in Kenya. And some of the things I think about, for example, are a proper background check at the point of recruitment of individuals into the policing system. A certificate of good conduct is not enough. We have to do a proper background check in terms of the behavioral conduct of those individuals who apply to become police officers, so that even before we train them, we are at least certain that we are recruiting the right individuals. There are certain jurisdictions that the background check goes as far as even the parents of that individual, in some instances even grandparents, to see whether there's a policing history in that family. So that is a crucial point, and some of the things that we need to do in order to protect our citizens.
Well, all right, that right there is Vincent, and we continue with this conversation, but for now let's take a short commercial break. Don't go far.
Meme TV, Muthegi wa Rũrĩrĩ.
Asante kwa kunipigia simu. Simu yako nitaipokea kwa muda usiokuwa mrefu. Na nisipoishika, usijali. Nitakupigia mimi mwenyewe.
Kupata nitakupigia kama sikiza tune yako, piga *811 *617#.
This is the comfort of a mom's hug. Nahi ni Molfix Pants Comfort that feels just like a mom's hug. Babies play around and then, oops, Molfix ina absorb like whoop. Imagine, haiwezi leak in 50 different movements. Makofi to both babies and Molfix. Renewed Molfix, ultimate quality.
Matuko maninagwo nĩ gũkĩa na nĩkĩo Farmhood Ventures Limited, kambuni ĩrĩa kũrekaine harĩ wendia na wĩigithia wa ng'ũndũ, ĩtigagĩrĩra nĩ yamũrehera project ciĩngũrani na mwĩhoko mwerũ nigukorwo kwihokwo ni ndwano itahitagia kiongoyo.
Barabara-inĩ nene ya Thika Garissa Road o ndagĩka 10 tu kuma taũni nene ya Matu tukamũrehera Ikatini Gardens na thogora wa 230,000 na kuo mwena wa Gĩthioko o ndagĩka 5 tu kuma Rami-inĩ tukamũrehera Evergreen Gardens Phase 2 brodi cia 50/100 na thogora wa 130,000.
Na warĩkia kwĩgwatĩra title deed ĩguoko.
No tucerere wabici-inĩ itũ Riruton Doctors Plaza 2nd floor kana wabici itũ ya Thika Maisha Heights 3rd floor. Namba itũ ya thimũ nĩyo 0704 000 333.
Ngoro yakwa nĩ gũkwambararia ĩkũgocage hingo ciothe we wanjamithirie irathimo ciaku ũgĩtũma nduĩke mũira wa ũtonga waku. Nĩ thengio nĩ marĩa ũnjĩkagĩra ona ngũhĩtĩirie no ũthiaga na mbere na kũndathima na nĩkĩo ndoiga ngoro yakwa ĩgũtũũre thererũkĩte ĩgũcokagĩria ngatho nĩ marĩa ũnjĩkagĩra. Rũgambi rũrũ rwa ngoro yakwa rũthondeketwo rũtuĩke wũira kũrĩ andũ arĩa marakũhũrĩra rĩrĩa marakũhũrĩra magathikĩrĩria mawĩko marĩa Ngai agwĩkĩire.
Kwĩgwatĩra skiza tune ngoro yakwa hihinya *811 *487# wĩgwatĩra skiza tune ngoro yakwa ta rũgambi thimũ-inĩ yaku ũmũthĩ ũkeni arĩa othe marakũhũrĩra thimũ *811 *487#.
Goes absolutely emphatic. He has done it.
Get ready for more on SuperSport, the only place to watch all the FIFA Club World Cup.
Naeza kuwa sina godfather, sina any support system. Lakini kwa uwezo wake Mwenyezi Mungu, in one way or the other, one day one time, mambo yangu itakuja kuwa sawa. One day one time.
Kwĩgwatĩra skiza tune one day one time hihinya *811 *227# wĩgwatĩra skiza tune one day one time thimũ-inĩ yaku ũmũthĩ *811 *227#.
Welcome back to the People Dialogue, and tonight we continue with the conversation, the elephant in the room, or is it in the country, of police brutality and how justice sometimes evades and the victims end up being frustrated. But let me start with Vincent on this note. We have laws that exactly explain how justice should be found for victims. Are there loopholes in our legal systems that are actually frustrating victims seeking justice of police brutality?
Well, generally, I would say that from where I sit, in fact, we have over-legislated. In this country, we have so many laws, we have so many policies. The question is, are we willing to put into practice what we have put on paper? And that's where the problem is. We have institutions that have been given autonomy, but they do not act as though they have been given autonomy. They act as though they are influenced from beyond their jurisdiction. For me, it is an issue of implementation. Yes, there may be a few gaps in some of the laws that we've put in place, like I had mentioned earlier, the Coroner's Act and the Victim Protection Act, which need to be fully operationalized. But in the sense that we want to prosecute cases, we have robust legislation on that. So it's just a matter of deciding and willing to implement what we have put on paper.
And now that you've brought up again the issue of victim acts, if I get it right, where we are talking of compensation for victims of police brutality. I'd love to draw parallels with what we call carbon credits, where controversy has been raised that it has become a license for countries to pollute and instead now buy into the carbon credits. Now, when you talk of compensation of victims, is this credit then to go ahead and injure the victims? After all, whoever is a casualty will be properly compensated.
No, the idea of compensation is twofold. One is so that, of course, the victim, if he's still alive, or his family, if he's deceased, can be compensated for the injury or death and loss that has occurred to him. It's a legal right. But secondly, and more importantly, when there is a pecuniary sanction against the state, when the state is now starting to spend money to compensate citizens out of acts of its own servants, then that pecuniary sanction causes some pain, some economic pain on the part of the state. And so it pushes the state to make sure that its officers are acting in tandem with the law so that it does not spend money. At the moment, we have so many cases, and not just of police brutality, but so many cases where people have been given judgments by the courts. They have executed the judgments, but they have not been paid, running into billions of shillings. I think at some point it was a point of discussion in Parliament on how the government should settle those cases. So that pecuniary sanction is important because it makes then government ride roughshod on its officers who are recklessly abusing their power and causing the government to spend money. So I think it is a good thing for there to be compensation.
All right, and Nora, there's something that Vincent mentioned earlier about institutions. After the case of Albert Ojwang and the recent case yesterday after the shooting in town, we had very many organizations and institutions coming out to, strongly condemn these actions. Is there anything more than strongly condemning that these institutions can actually do that is actionable in ending police brutality?
So I think it depends a little bit about which institutions you're talking about, right? If we're talking about institutions, if we're talking about civil society, for example, I think, yes, there is more that can be done and there is more that is being done, right? We do see groups are going to court. We see groups are doing that kind of political engagement and advocacy that is needed. At Katiba Institute, for example, the case you referenced on the order that police shouldn't be masked, that was one of the cases that we had brought. We have a number of cases that also would essentially bring police closer, that could reestablish a certain trust and maybe bond again between people and the police, including the implementation of sort of the county policing authority. And so I think there are measures that can be taken and they are being taken. Again, the problem is that when there is a systemic lack of implementing what happens in response to those measures, then really, there's only so far that we can go in pushing for that. But I think, again, we are really seeing that the populace altogether is pushing for accountability on that front. So yes, civil society can do its part in pushing for that and in fighting for that. But ultimately, we need to be working within a system that isn't completely anarchical and where we haven't seen a breakdown of institutions entirely in order for that to work.
All right, Vincent talked about, gaps that are currently there legally, but it would be interesting to know, you've mentioned that we are short of implementation, not legislation. So are there laws that can actually seal these loopholes?
Yeah, and Vincent has spoken about a few of them, including the Coroner's Act, including the Victim Protection Act. Again, I think the County Policing Authority is an important one as well, and it is shocking, really. We received that judgment, I think it was nine years ago, that we've been waiting for implementation on that. And the idea behind that, it's a constitutional idea that there should be you know, police should be closely connected, again, with the communities that they serve. So it's not a meaningless act or a meaningless authority or something that is just there on paper for no reason. There are a number of laws, of cases, of authorities, of orders that have been put in place and that have just not been respected so far. And so that is one of the things that we would really like to see is, can we at least have the things that have been ordered and that, you know, very clearly are within the remit of the authorities to undertake? Can we at least have that happen?
Right, and talk of community policing, we had the National Research Crime Center recently release a report on community policing, and interestingly, at least about 70% of Kenyans did not actually understand between what we call Nyumba Kumi and police, community policing. And now this bringing trouble because now people do not have trust in the current systems. They do not understand how they're supposed to be cooperating with them because there are also trust deficits. Are these issues that can actually come to an end?
I think so, because the trust deficit, I think that the issue is not with people not understanding systems, right? I think that there is a lack of interest when there is a lack of trust, and that there is a lack of engagement when there is a lack of trust. We've seen people are really engaged. People are understanding and going to the streets over really complex issues, right? People follow our court cases. Sometimes they're on very complex matters. People really follow them, really engage with us at KI as well. And so I really struggle with this idea that, oh, well, there's a lack of understanding and that's what's creating some of these difficulties. I think, as you say, it's a lack of trust. And the lack of trust is leading to that lack in interest, and that lack in interest is then leading to that seeming lack in understanding. I think people can understand very clearly. And I think when the systems are put in place for communities and for people to trust that their interests are being protected, that they are being protected again and served by the institutions that have been designed to protect and serve them, I think we will very quickly find that people can understand and that people can trust. We just need to enable that.
Right, indeed. We continue with this conversation right here. It doesn't end, but right now, Mombi Shege is currently in Studio B with their guests. And Mombi, what do they have to say?
Right, thank you so much, David Kagina, on that side. Indeed, we continue with this discussion right here on this side. And let me just get to Wakili. Let's talk about, Kriegler's report and its recommendation after, 2007-2008 post-election violence. And some of its findings or recommendations were an establishment of an independent oversight. IPOA came in, not sure how that's going. Enhancing training programs to promote professionalism and adherence to human rights standards, as well as reforming police institutions to improve efficiency and responsiveness to public needs. But this seems to still not have been met. What is stalling some of these recommendations? And also keeping in mind, Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen talked about, new recommendations, installation of CCTV cameras in police cells and whatnot. But we still have recommendations that are not yet implemented.
Mombi, we just talked about the statement by the Nairobi boss, police boss, of those funny statements they always issue, which are very ambiguous. And that is the same thing we witnessed with the CS Interior, Kipchumba Murkomen. And it's so sad. He's a member of the Law Society and he's behaving in that manner. It's so unfortunate that even the previous docket that he held also was marred with a lot of controversies in terms of the airport problems, which is quite a very, very unfortunate space when we see individuals whose character is very much questionable still hold offices in such kind of high offices, and they don't believe in what they're talking to us about. Why am I saying this? Because in Kenya, if we were honest enough and with the recommendations that were made by Kriegler, the reasoning and why Justice Kriegler was invited in Kenya was mainly to address the atrocities that we faced in this country during the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And the report was so detailed enough that if it was implemented fully as suggested, then this country should not be having a problem with misuse of the police force. I say this because the recommendation of all these recommendations were captured in the Constitution. But the problem is we have a government, and we have governments which have been unwilling to implement or to fully realize these recommendations. And if you look at the issue of IPOA, for instance, it's a toothless dog. It is just that how many prosecutions, successful prosecutions, have we seen from the IPOA? With all those complaints members of the public have always raised about the misuse of the police power, we could not hear any statement or even any action being taken by the IPOA. The previous commission, which finished their term just the other day, they left office having not taken any serious action against the persons who are involved in committing atrocities during the last year. 2024 maandamano and 2023 finance bill maandamano, because there was also a maandamano in 2023. So nothing has been done on what happened. Yet it is an institution which Kenyans aspired and even brought on board by incorporating the suggestion by Kriegler to have an independent police oversight authority whose mandate is to look into the conduct of the policemen while they're discharging their duty, to ensure that they do their duty within the confines of the law, and also ensure that they serve Kenyans without all those misuse of power, where we see children being shot, we see protesters being shot. But unfortunately, the government have been unwilling, and to make matters worse, this government, the Kenya Kwanza government, has made matters worse by even encouraging the police now to go rogue, to become goons, to be turned to thugs. So that's why we saw Kenyans last year being shot. Officers, even military officers, were being who we came to learn later had no authority to be in parliament, were being seen in cameras shooting Kenya. So we have been having a regime that does not want to transform or reform the police service. That's why we could not even have properly documented CCTV recordings in the police stations. That's why up to date we don't have proper data recording in the OB. They still use that manual thing you write in the pen, as in you just wonder how such kind of information, where we are collecting data every single day on the crimes and the things that are going on in the country, and we are relying on a book, which book 5 years from now you can't even trace it. So and yet their recommendation of bringing in technology, there is a budgetary allocation every year for that. But we could see Murkomen trying to soothe Kenyans and promising how they are going to now allocate more money, because I think he loved places where there is a lot of tendering allocation of money. And that's what happened with the airport. He just loved allocation of money, and that is what we are just we are tired of.
Let's get Philip in on this. And the 1 year anniversary of last year's Gen Z protest is coming up next week. Nairobi police boss SEDA has assured protesters, of security. But Philip, having participated in yesterday's protests, not knowing if the next person, then the person next to you is a goon or is a protester, how does it make you feel? And also, how does it make you feel, SEDA saying that you will be protected?
Okay. Thank you. So, what the government is doing is called psychological execution. They are trying to kill the hope. They think that because they shot Boniface, that will make Philip and others be afraid to go to the street to demand for justice. That is what they think. But this is an assurity. We will no longer be silenced. That will never happen. There is no way that the police boss is now saying they will offer us security. But yesterday we just saw, the whole world saw it. They were giving goons security, not the people who was peacefully demonstrating. How is a thug, a thief, going to give us security? They are the people stealing. You saw that cop carrying laptops to the police car, and they are now trying to say he was rescuing. Where did he rescue it from? He was the one who stole them. Last year, there were 2 of them who stole TV and they were carrying, running away. They are thieves. Yeah, that is what they're trying to do. But it will not be easy. That one I know, because I don't know the next time who is beside me. I am not afraid of the police anymore. But I am afraid that my own brother, because he is poor, he doesn't have money to buy his daily meal, doesn't have money for rent, is going to be misused by these politicians. Give them 500 bob, 1,000 bob, come to the street and can even kill me using a knife, using a rungus. The police are, the government is now taking advantage of our brothers and sisters because they are vulnerable. That is even the reason why this Kenya Kwanza government doesn't care about the youths, because they know if we are empowered, if we have jobs, then we will not be that stupid to be used by politicians as goons. We are educated. It is, remember last year, the William Ruto, I'm sorry, I nearly said the president. William Ruto, after the Gen Z protest that happened on the 25th, he said that the criminals came and vandalized goods, broke into parliament. But what does the law say? If I am a criminal, yes, then I should be taken to the court of law. Am I right? Yes, I am. But he said we are goons, we were criminals. Does that justify that now he can give orders for us to be shot? Chege was running away from the scene. He was running away from the parliament, but he was shot dead because they said he was a criminal. That is what they are saying. We are no longer safe in the hands of this government. And to these politicians that we have, that we call leaders, it is very shameful of you.
Philip, you're a young man, of course, and I'm sure you're quite active on, social media, X, Facebook, Instagram, whatever platforms. A lot of these tribal narratives, if you look at the past few weeks, few months, are being escalated on social media. What do you have to say to that? Are young people buying into that tribal narrative? Who killed who? They're from this tribe. Who died? They're from. How do you see it? Are young people falling for this?
They think that we can fall for that, but we are a different generation. We are past that now. They use the trick on our parents, but it won't work with us, because these people are looking forward in 2027 general election. And this is not only the sitting politicians. This narrative is being sold even with the coalition, the opposition coalition, and it is something very bad. It is something very wrong. We are a country, we are one, and unity started not yesterday, not today, but it started during the fight of independence. When they went to the street, there was never a Kikuyu, there was never a Luo, there was never a Kamba, but they were fighting for one purpose, that they wanted freedom. Freedom for Kenya. When we celebrate Independence Day, we don't go there to celebrate the only Mau Mau fighters who fought, the only Luos who fought, but we say it is Independence Day for Kenya as a nation. To mean unity must be there. And to my fellow youths, and to the parents too, please, 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 let not this narrative be repeated. We saw what the politicians did in 2007, 2008, what happened? The same people who are there,
Okay.
the politicians that we went to the street fighting because their votes were, I don't know, stolen, they are still there. But we have souls, we have dreams that were killed on that day. We still have people who are displaced. It is us who suffer while they sit on the table, enjoying.
Thank you so much, Philip. Wakili, we are almost out of time. Before that, we've seen blatant disregard of, court directives by policemen. Yesterday, you saw, not yesterday, the other week, of a lady trying to pull a mask off of a police officer. We saw confrontations yesterday. Why do the police feel, were they right, the protesters, to do that? And also, why do the police feel like they can just disregard court orders? I mean, in terms of wearing uniform, in terms of why are you wearing a mask when clearly there's a court order against that? Is it because they know there's no consequence?
The main reason why you could see the junior police officer disregarding the law, not only just putting the mask, even the use of tear gas canisters, the shootings, because last year Justice Bahati pronounced himself on this matter, and the aspect of the Inspector General of Police allowing his juniors to continue covering their faces, to continue using excessive force towards unarmed, peaceful civilians. It shows you they're getting the support from their bosses. Police service is a command service. When you see a junior officer doing something, someone above him has authorized him to do so. Someone above, when you see that officer manning the OB has not recorded somebody in on the OB occurrence book, and they have booked and already they have a client inside the cells without their record, someone has ordered them to do so. And we want to remind the police officers, even the junior officers, to remember that they have a responsibility, individual, constitutional responsibility to do their job. And they need to remember the case of Willie Kimani. Their colleague, the lady, is serving 20 years, not because of doing anything wrong, anything else, apart from failing to record the occurrence book. So they need to know that they have a constitutional duty, and unfortunately that their bosses are disrespecting the constitution, so giving them the sanctions to proceed so. But I'm happy that the LSK has taken up this matter, and we are moving to court to petition for contempt of court, because the IG need to be held sorely liable for the conduct that we are seeing with the police as the commander.
Thank you, Wakili. We'll be getting back here for your final remarks, but before we do that, let me throw it back to David Kagina. Kagina?
Well, indeed, a lot has been mentioned right there, and one of the most effective ways of regulation is self-regulation. Now, turning to Vincent, within the police service, we also have an internal affairs unit. We do not hear them very loud, but are they effectively serving their purpose?
From where I sit, the internal affairs unit is grossly under-resourced. And even in terms of operations, I think considering the mandate that they have, which is to inquire into the misconduct of police officers, they ought to be a semi-autonomous government agency. However, they are still within the NPS. In fact, for them to conduct some of their operations, they have to get resources from the headquarters, and so that makes them to lack independence. I think they should have functional independence, and more importantly, they should be resourced adequately for them to be able to perform their functions. But at the moment, then their impact will be very minimal for those reasons.
Do you think the issue of funding is by design? Because we also have the judiciary, which time and again, like this year, they requested they fronted a budget of about 41 billion only to get 22. That's almost half. That way it's frustrating their efforts. Same to some security agencies. Do you think the underfunding is by design?
Well, I wouldn't pronounce myself on that and say it's by design. Neither would I deny it. I wouldn't know. But the fact that the office has been established, then it necessarily follows that it ought to be adequately resourced if there is willingness. But whether it's by design or lack of funds, I wouldn't know.
Right, there's a question I had floated to Nora before we come back to her on what these institutions are doing. What is International Justice Mission doing to end police brutality?
Several things. I'll just mention a few. One is that we represent victims of police brutality in court. We actually take cases of police brutality pro bono, I must mention. Right now, we have about 100 cases that are active in court, pending litigation. So we offer, we have lawyers who represent the families of the victims if the victims are deceased, or the victims themselves if they are still alive. And we do that, like I said, on a pro bono basis. At the same time, we offer psychosocial support to the victims throughout the trial process until sentencing, so that they can be restored to a correct frame of mind, because some of these brutalities cause a lot of trauma on the victims, and so they require to be restored in their correct frames of mind. We also work with the justice systems to strengthen the justice system. Some of these policies we have invested heavily, like the decision to charge guidelines. We assisted the ODPP in coming up with those, facilitated the ODPP in coming up with those guidelines so that the criminal justice system is strengthened. We also represented in several committees, including the National Council on Administration of Justice, where we help to influence policies so that we can end police brutality. So, so many things, but we are doing our bit from where we sit.
All right, and now to Nora. Something has been mentioned by Wakili in the studio with Mumbi about the issue of accountability. Do you think holding people responsible individually for actions taken by themselves or their juniors in the chain of command is a solution to police brutality?
I don't know if it's a solution to police brutality, but I think it's an important step in accountability. I think, you know, we are witnessing situations where police are saying, you know, well, we don't know who did what, we don't know who is responsible for what. Ultimately, there should be command responsibility in those cases. And we've seen, again, in a judgment in which Katiba Institute was involved, we have seen such a ruling saying there should be command responsibility in such cases. You know, we've seen, when we look at the fact pattern of the Baby Pendo case, of course, we see how important command responsibility is there as well. I don't think we can say that that is the silver bullet when it comes to police brutality. But I think when it comes to accountability, it is one of the core issues that we need to see.
All right, and issues of accountability, currently, would you say there are existing loopholes that are actually making it difficult?
I think there are loopholes, but I think, again, it's actually more of an ignoring of the structures that exist and proceeding even where there aren't loopholes, essentially, just not taking the action that is required. And there is a level of gaslighting when it comes to accountability. You know, the ways in which we are, again, being drip-fed information when it comes to investigations of cases of police brutality. When it comes to, you know, cases like that of Alberto João, where, you know, every day new information was released, and every day it seemed like new information was coming only in response to people having found out something or something having been made public in some certain way. And so I don't know that the problem is loopholes as much as it is an active evading of the accountability in the system.
All right, and this question now goes to both of you. This evening on the People Dialogue, one thing has come out clearly, that people do not have faith in the system. We have trust deficits. So what needs to be done, starting with Nora, what needs to be done to restore faith in the justice system?
I think there needs to be a genuine engagement, both with from the perspective of accountability. There needs to be an end to the gaslighting, as I said. You know, earlier I read a press statement that said, that urged all Kenyans and especially young people to reject violence and criminality. I don't think under the Constitution, especially young people are to reject violence and criminality. I think we're all meant to reject violence and criminality. And in a week where we have seen multiple police officers charged with acts of violence and multiple police officers accused with criminality, I have to wonder why we're not also urging the police to reject acts of violence and criminality. So I think we need to see a genuine engagement with what's happening. People need to feel like they are being heard. And so I think the engagement with the Constitution, with the rights enshrined in the Constitution, cases moving at the same speed through the justice system when they are about police brutality as when they are about certain political issues. That is what we need to see, and that is what will restore that kind of faith.
All right, Vincent.
There is need to be fidelity to the oaths that public officers take. Those who are in these positions, who are privileged to be in big positions in government, need to uphold the oaths that they have taken. There's such a huge deficit from what they speak as compared to what they do. If you're talking of police brutality, for example, they just need to stop the killings. It's that simple, yeah, and that would restore public confidence. Also, they need to engage the public, and not through funerals, but through constructive community dialogues where they give account of what they are doing with the resources, what they are doing with the mandate, what they are doing with the powers that they've been given by the law. So community engagement is very key, so that we do not have a state where we only have public statements, which sometimes are just rhetorical, when we have an issue such as we have now, but we do not have continuous engagement with members of the public, where public officers give account of the power and resources and positions that they have. I think that will go a long way in sustaining the trust that has now waned almost completely.
All right, and tonight, even as we talk about police brutality, those watching us are not just part victim, but we also have police officers who might be watching right now, who are actually watching right now. What would you say to them in regards to brutality?
What I would say is that I think there is need to have and act on an individual conscience. It's high time we went past these are orders from above. You cannot implement an unlawful order. There is an oath that you took as a police officer. Keep to that oath. If you are given orders that are clearly unlawful, you have no obligation to obey such orders. In fact, the law requires you not to obey unlawful orders. So taking individual responsibility would go a long way. And for the police officers who have done that and are doing a good job, we also would want to applaud them, even as we seek accountability for those who are doing the opposite.
Nora, I can see you agree with most of his points, but what would you have to add?
I mean, I fully agree, and I would say maybe the only thing that I would add is speak out as well. You know, we need people to speak out about what is happening and what orders are being given in what context. We need people to come forward. It's our constitution, you know. It's not the constitution just of people who are protesting or people who have a different opinion from certain, you know, certain police officers or certain people in authority positions. This is to the police officers, this is your constitution, just as it is mine. And so let's value it and let's treat it as such. And please, let's hold each other accountable when we're violating it and when we're, you know, not treating it the way it deserves to be treated.
And for the victims watching this who've given up, they wouldn't report, went unheard because of their lack of faith in the justice system, what would you have to tell them?
I'm sorry? I'm really sorry that this is what they're facing, and I would hope, you know, that through partners like IJM, through others who go to court directly, who represent people through rapid response or through public interest litigation like we do, you know, I hope that they will have a chance to find that faith again or to come forward. But I completely understand if people feel frustrated, if people feel afraid. And again, collectively, I think, you know, as a country, we need to really ask ourselves, is that what we want? Is that what we want to stand for? Personally, it's definitely not what I want to stand for. I think many people watching this program don't want to stand for that. And so personally, I am really, really sorry that this is what people are experiencing.
Vincent, from the point of international justice mission, what would you tell the victims who are yet to report?
I would tell them that they still need to report. Did you say report?
Yeah.
They still need to do that. They still hope. There are still organizations, such as the ones represented here, which are pursuing justice for victims. We still have also a remnant within the policing system who want to do the right things, and they want that accountability. So we should not give up, because if we give up, then we let the perpetrators win. That one we certainly should not do. We should keep hope alive and pursue justice. And at one point, we'll come to a point where we would not have police brutality, I believe.
All right, and even as we get to wrap up our conversation this evening, allow me to hand it over to Mumbi in Studio B with her panel to wrap up.
And I just want to give a chance to my panel, Stephen Mbogwa, who's a lawyer and also a council member of LSK. A lot has been said, and there seems to be a problem with the training, the recruitment process of the police. What really needs to be done to bring change to, you know, the National Police Service?
I think we need to be intentional with the service, especially the government need to be very intentional when it comes to recruitment, the criteria used, the procedure of training, how we equip them in terms of respecting the human rights, the kind of training they undergo, which should be anchored on the law, and also serious and proper supervision and budgetary allocation, because even some of these police officers, we saw the IPOA declare almost more than half of them are mentally unfit, and most of them are stressed. They are suffering from so much depression. Obviously, because of the working conditions, the living, the way they get poorly paid, there is no equipment, illegal orders being issued for them. Whenever you don't obey them, right, you are sent to hostile places. Also, a lot of nepotism in recruitment, which is not based on merit. So you find people are not able to be objective. They are not able to serve members of the public with a lot of objectivity, and they are forced to incline to their tribal cocoons or their family cocoons, because most of these police officers are family members. You find this a family that has been in the force for so long. Everybody in their family members always join that force. So it's high time we start basing the recruitment on merit base, because Kriegler report was very much detailed. The Constitution is very much detailed when it comes to the police. The problem we have is that we have individuals at the helm who have no intention of transforming or reforming the police service. Our officers, kindly remember you have an individual duty. Don't obey illegal orders. Kindly remember that even if you're not held accountable under this regime, one day you'll be held accountable in your line of duty for the actions and the atrocities that you commit as you try to implement those illegal orders given by your bosses.
Thank you so much, Wakili. Philip Generali, your final words, and also if you could speak to Inspector General Douglas Kanja, what would you say to him?
Okay, to the Inspector General Douglas Kanja and to all the police officers, men and women in uniform. My question is, are you serving the selfish individuals, or are you serving the Constitution? Your role is to protect the people of Kenya. And to the police, we are your brothers, we are your sisters. And when you are fighting for a better country, you are included. You are part of us. There is no need to obey the orders from some individuals, because these people know that the lies and manipulation no longer works with the people. And the only card that they have right now is violence. So they are using you, the police, to shed blood, because that is the only oil that they are having right now that is pushing their machine of politics ahead. So please, 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 and to Kenyans, when you stay silent, because when other people are shot and you decide to stay back, you are not helping, but you are also becoming the part of the problem. Right now, let us look at the bigger picture. Time is coming, and they will pay. History will be written. This is not the time to give up, but it is the time to stand up as a country, united for a cause, and to make Kenya, our motherland, a better place. And that truly will come. So don't lose hope.
Thank you so much, Philip Generali. He is the organizing secretary of Inject Party. Thank you so much for being with us, Philip, as well as Stephen Mbogwa, who is a lawyer and a council member for Law Society of Kenya. Thank you so much, Wakili, for being here with us and your great contributions. Asanteni sana. Thank you so much, everybody who's been a part of this very important discussion. We can only hope for a better tomorrow, a better Kenya, and let's keep praying for our country. Asanteni sana, everybody who's been a part of this on the People Dialogue here on Kameme TV as well as K24. It is a good night from me, Mumbi Chege. Have a good night. Be blessed. For now, let me hand over to David Kagina. Kagina, it's all you.
Allow me to also take closing remarks from my guests, starting from Vincent right here.
Thank you. Save for God, nothing is eternal. Police brutality is not going to be eternal and will not allow it to be eternal. We have made baby steps, perhaps toddler steps, but now it's time to make adult steps and bring it to a complete end. Thank you.
All right, Nora?
Those were very inspiring closing remarks. I was coming from a slightly more practical perspective, saying the Police Reform Working Group, which I think both of our organizations are represented in alongside many others, issued a public safety advisory ahead of the protests, highlighting some of the recent developments, legal developments, on the de-escalation of the use of force, on the need to protect protesters and emergency health workers, journalists and bystanders. And on police collaboration with IPOA and KNCHR and the institutional mandate that there is. And I think my parting words would really be, please let's respect that public advisory. Let's respect what has been put out there. We've not seen the end, I think, of protests. We've not seen the end for a push for accountability because of the way we're seeing the response being. And so I think we also haven't seen the end of that kind of engagement from security forces. And so it's really important that people familiarize themselves with their rights, people familiarize themselves with the numbers that they can call when things happen, and the police services who are watching this also familiarize themselves with that public safety advisory, because it is ultimately your responsibility to ensure that those rights are being respected.
All right, the Englishmen say a good turn deserves another. So after your closing remarks, allow me to ask you the last question, and this goes to citizenry that at times go on record provoking these police officers, leading to escalations. What would you tell them?
Well, I guess it depends what you mean by go on record and provoke that kind of escalation. I would say constitutionally we have free speech, right? So if something is being said that provokes someone, I don't see that really justifies the use of force, especially again as a body that is meant to serve and protect. And the use of force, there's very clear rules around when that is appropriate, when that is proportionate. I was offended by what someone told me is definitely not one of those standards.
All right. Vincent?
We have two groups, civilians and police. One is trained, one is not. One is a disciplined force, one is not. So certainly in such instances, we expect the trained and the disciplined group to behave as such.
All right, so in no way do you believe that provocation from the public should be an excuse for brutality?
Perhaps we should define provocation, because if provocation means citizens becoming unruly or committing unlawful acts, then certainly the law has got also to take its course. But if provocation is being interpreted to mean that if, for example, a protester comes and shouts at a police officer, then that's provocation, I do not think that would apply.
Right. Well, indeed, as we wrap up this conversation right here on the People Dialogue that has been coming live from Kameme TV as well as K24, we have feedback from the viewers who've been watching and following closely this conversation, and we can get to sample them. We have Theo Masharia on standby.
All right, that's very right, David Kagina, as you've mentioned it. My goodness, a flurry of reactions streaming in across our social media platforms. And just by the limitation of time, I think we will be able to sample all of them. But as of now, allow me to sample just some of them that have streamed in across our social media platforms. We started with X and went to WhatsApp. And right about now, remember, the question of the day that we asked was, how do we end police brutality? And how do you feel as a Kenyan about the current state of affairs in the country, about police using excessive force, more so on unarmed civilians? Right about now, let's also balance it up and cross over to Facebook and see what it is that you have to say on Facebook. We start with Simeon Kipkogei Kimutai, who's been watching the People Dialogue tonight. And on Facebook, he says on the question of the day that I believe those who are exercising their right to demonstrate should not misuse this right. Sometimes they abuse the right by using excessive force against the police. That is Simeon Kipkogei. We also have Wilson Boaz on Facebook saying, let's respect them too. They are also human. If you provoke them too much, guess what happens? That is Wilson Boaz. Mwariri Dariel saying, by making them display badges with their names, and should be illegal to cover up their faces. Perfect. She says we should end police brutality by making police officers show their badges and unmasking their faces. Frank Aston also on Facebook says, as citizens, we can do nothing about it because the government will not stop police brutality. Instead, the government supports police brutality. We also have Ahmad Nava on Facebook says, when the hyena is the prosecutor, the wolf is the witness. The jackal is the lawyer and the leopard is the judge. Where can a goat get justice? In my defense, sitataja mtu. My goodness, that is Ahmad Nava on Facebook. We also have Achieng on Facebook saying police brutality is a betrayal of our constitution. And Achieng goes on and says civic education for both the police and the public is key to ending this cycle. Another person who's been watching this broadcast, that is Mutua, who's watched the People Dialogue tonight, and he says it's time we introduce body cameras for all officers. Let their actions be recorded and made public whenever necessary. That is Mutua answering the question, how do we end police brutality in the country? We also have WAMS saying there must be a national healing conversation. Police brutality is a symptom of a deeper problem, lack of accountability and poor training. That is WAMS also, who's been watching tonight's special edition of the People Dialogue. OT on Facebook also says, we are tired of being targeted. Police need community policing strategies, not intimidation tactics. Nduthi yangu jana ilichomwa, sasa hata sijui unga nitatoa wapi. That is OT, one of the people affected by yesterday's protests. Njeri also on Facebook says, as business people, we feel helpless when officers harass us and demand bribes. Strengthening the internal affairs unit will be a big step forward. Hongo tu na RNG na rungu ndizo zafanya kazi. The head is the problem. We also have Brian on Facebook says, the head is, that was Njeri. Let's cross over to Brian. Brian also says, young people want justice, not bullets. Let the government create open channels for us to report abuses and actually act on them. Fatma also on Facebook, there is no justice unless it is equal. Officers who brutalize the public must face the law like everyone else. Zainab also on Facebook says, the police need training in mental health and emotional intelligence. They are supposed to protect and not to provoke. Kiprono also on Facebook says, we need to go back to the drawing board. Recruit people of integrity into the police force, not just anyone looking for the job. That was Kiprono, and that is a raft of the reactions coming in on Facebook, from some calling on the Kenyans to also act easy on the police, to some also asking Kenyans to maintain calm when dealing with the police, and also some even reiterating on the importance of training, the aspect of training among our police officers. That is just a raft of the comments on Facebook. Thank you for watching tonight's edition of the People Dialogue. We look forward to doing this again, same time, same place. My name is Theo Masharia, and right now I cross you over, or I give you back to David Kagina for the last remarks.
Well, indeed, thank you, Theo. Indeed, we've had amazing feedback from you viewers on these special production that comes to you every fortnight on Wednesday, starting from 6 p.m. all the way to right about now, heading to 11 o'clock, always having topics that touch directly on the people and making this your dialogue. Tonight, we delved into police brutality, and we've had you weigh in the conversation. We've also heard from the experts what they've had to say. To those who have ears, let them hear what we had to say tonight here on the People Dialogue. But even as we depart for the evening, let me give a precaution that to be a Kenyan, we need not give a trigger warning, in that we have a few specific individual police officers trigger happy, ready to break and dismantle human rights at their prerogative. Instead, this is a kind reminder to every officer out there. You're our brother, you are our sisters, our friends, husbands to some, wives to some. But above all these things, you are a Kenyan citizen. And the future of this country is entirely in your hands. So even as you enforce these laws and maintain order, ensure you do it within the confines of the Constitution and the laws of the country. That's it from here on the People Dialogue. I've been your host, David Kagina. Enjoy your evening.
Kameme TV, Muthegi wa Rũrĩrĩ.
Naeza kuwa sina godfather, sina any support system, lakini kwa uwezo wake Mwenyezi Mungu, in one way or the other, one day one time, mambo yangu itakuja kuwa sawa. One day one time.
Kwegwatira skize tune one day one time. Hihinya star 811 star 227 hasha. Wegwatira skize tune one day one time. Thimoine yaku umuthi star 811 star 227 hash.
One day you will eat, walk, and talk like royalty. I need you to wake up.
Uko aware this is not a game?
Make it happen.
We need to shut this business down.
Hii biashara ndo kila kitu kwenye hii familia. Nikufe ama nisikufe.
Kama mbaya, mbaya.
An eye for an eye.
What is your family involved in? Go close to take control over the hearts of empire. When in mnoma sana.
People Daily, Kenya's trusted newspaper, is making history as the first daily to go fully digital. By transitioning from print to the PD News app, we are delivering the same exceptional journalism you've relied on for years in a completely new way to experience it. It's news for today and the future. No paper, no waste. Just real-time updates and customizable stories. This is a leap towards innovation, sustainability, and a better experience for you, our reader. Download the PD app now on Play Store and App Store. People Daily. News that moves with you.
Ngoro yakwa nĩ gũkwambararia ĩkũgocage hingo ciothe we wanjamithirie irathimo ciaku ũgĩtũma nduĩke mũira wa ũtonga waku. Nĩ thengio nĩ marĩa ũnjĩkagĩra ona ngũhĩtĩirie no ũthiaga na mbere na kũndathima na nĩkĩo ndoiga ngoro yakwa ĩgũtũũre thererũkĩte ĩgũcokagĩria ngatho nĩ marĩa ũnjĩkagĩra. Rũgambi rũrũ rwa ngoro yakwa rũthondeketwo rũtuĩke ũira kũrĩ andũ arĩa marakũhũrĩra rĩrĩa marakũhũrĩra magathikĩrĩria mawĩko marĩa Ngai agwĩkĩire.
Kwĩgwatĩra Skiza Tune ngoro yakwa hihinya *811 *487 hash wĩgwatĩra Skiza Tune ngoro yakwa tarũgambi thimũ-inĩ yaku ũmũthĩ ũkeni arĩa othe marakũhũrĩra thimũ *811 *487
Goes absolutely emphatic. He has done it.
Get ready for more on Supersport, the only place to watch all the FIFA Club World Cup.
Usife moyo, weka matumaini yako hai. Ipo siku maombi yako yatatimia. Ipo siku neema itashuka maishani mwako. Zidi kuweka matumaini yako hai. Kwĩgwatĩra Skiza Tune tumaini hihinya *811 *48 hash wĩgwatĩra Skiza Tune tumaini thimũ-inĩ yaku ũmũthĩ *811 *48 hash.
Tafarĩra ĩno ndĩagĩrĩire mũndũ wa thĩ wa ũkũrũ wa mĩaka 16.
This is the comfort of a mom's hug. Nahi ni Molfix Spans comfort that feels just like a mom's hug. Babies play around and then, oops, Molfix ina absorb like whoop. Imagine haiwezi leak in 50 different movements. Makofi to both babies and Molfix. Renewed Molfix, ultimate quality.
Alright. Asante sana maridadi pozi kibisha. Na kabla mtazamaji basi tuweze kukuingilia hapa bishi ukipenda zaidi kwenye utangulizi mwanzo wa sinema. Kumbuka nimeweza kukuandalia Skiza Tune namba basi inajulikana kama vile asanti kwa kunipigia. Na kupokea hii Skiza Tune wewe mtazamaji basi kuweza kupokea hii Skiza Tune yani unachukua simu yako na kisha basi unabonyeza *837 *511 hash. Unabonyeza *837 *511 hash. Kwa hakika ukifanya hivyo utakuwa umepokea asanti kwa kunipigia kama Skiza Tune yako. Na kisha tumesasa mtazamaji tukuja kujiunga bishi na wana AGC Studios. Ina maana hapa basi ni kwenye mwanzo wa sinema shasha.
Na kuna jamaa ambaye hapa bila shaka basi anaelezea kwamba na kweti maisha yake ilikuwa hapa basi ni maisha tu ya kawaida hadi wakati na ambapo basi aliweza kujiunga na kikosi cha wanajeshi shisha. Walala yai. Wakati aliweza kujiunga na kikosi cha wanajeshi akapata mambo ni ngumu sana tena zaidi. Mwanzo unapayukiwa karibu ukuliwe. Walala yai. Unapayukiwa karibu umezwe. Title ya sinema Freelance. Asante sana. Freelance. Na umeandaliwa na John Cena. Hatimaye hapa bila shaka basi baada ya kufanya hivyo vyote bado akaendelea kutandikwa na vijana. Alijiunga na kikosi cha wanajeshi akiwa kijana mdogo sana, lakini hapa bila shaka basi ikawa ni mambo ngumu sana tena zaidi hadi akaamua kuachana na ile kazi ya wanajeshi na akaamua hapa basi kuwa wakili wa kawaida. Unaona? Kuna kitu kilifanya mtazamaji hapa bila shaka basi John Cena. Ololo yai. Kuna kitu kilimfanya John Cena kuachana hapa basi na kazi ya wanajeshi na akaamua hapa basi kuwa wakili wa kawaida. Ala. Sasa ikawa kwamba na kweti maisha yake imerudi nomo. Ulolo yai kupitana na majirani stara kama hiyo, kubabysit watoto wa wenyewe wanamtusi. Gayu. Unaona? Kwa hivyo jamaa wetu akaamua hapa basi kuweza kuendelea na ile janta yake shisha. Unaona? Kaamua kuendelea na ile janta yake, lakini bado anakumbuka kila kitu na ambacho basi aliweza kupitia kwa kikosi cha wanajeshi shisha. Ulolo yai. Anakumbuka kila kitu na ambacho basi aliweza kupitia kwa kikosi cha wanajeshi. Mwanzo training na ambayo hapa basi aliweza kupokea kwa kikosi cha wanajeshi. Aish, ni training ingine na ambayo hapa basi ni deadly sana tena zaidi. Hadi akaweza kujiunga na kikosi cha wana American Special Forces Commandos. Na wakati moja wakatumwa hapa bila shaka basi kwa kibarua shisha. Sikiza, ameweza kufanya training, akawa mtu mkubwa, akawa kiongozi na akawa hapa basi ameweza already tayari basi kuweza kujiunga na kikosi cha wana Special Forces. Kwa hivyo wakati moja mtazamaji hapa basi waliweza kukaribishwa sasa. Hii ni sherehe ya kuweza kukaribishwa kwa kikosi cha wana Special Forces. Kwa hivyo kukawa hapa basi kuna sherehe. Imagine kutoka hapa basi mwanajeshi wa kawaida hadi kuingia kwa kikosi cha wana Special Forces. Ikawa kwamba na kati jamaa wetu alikuwa na bibi na yule bibi hapa basi akaweza kumzalia mtoto. Wakati moja wakatumwa kwa kibarua hapa basi kule upande wa Paldonia.
That's our target, President Venegas. We're here to take him out.
Wakatumwa commission na mtazamaji kule upande wa Paldonia kwenda kuangamiza president wa hapo upande wa Paldonia na ambabasi anajulikana kama vile Joan Venegas. Joan Venegas inaaminika kwamba na kwete hapa basi ni dictator, lakini hata kabla mtazamaji hawajafika hapo upande wa Paldonia, hata kabla hawajatua chopa likavamiwa. John Cena na kikosi chake cha wana Special Forces wakawa hapa basi ambushed. Kumbe walikuwaga wamegojewa, na hiyo sasa mtazamaji ndio namba hapa basi ilifanyaga jamaa wetu John Cena kuweza kujiuzuru na kikosi cha wana Special Forces. Kwa nini? Wakati uliweza kufika kule upande wa Paldonia, aliweza kuanguka vibaya. Huyu jamaa wetu John Cena aliangukaga vibaya. Sasa ile kuanguka yake ilikuwa noma hata kuliko ile ya Garoya Junior. Unaona? Ina maana alianguka vibaya sana hata kuliko Garoya Junior. Jamaa wetu akaumia kwa uti wa mgongo. Unaona? Akaumia hapa basi kwa uti wa mgongo. Na kwa hivyo kijana wetu John Cena akawachana hapa basi na kazi ya wana Special Forces. Ina maana akajiuzuru na kikosi cha wanajeshi. Sasa anakuwa wakili wa kawaida.
Your breath smells.
Dadina uoshe mdomo. Kai. Unakaje bila kuosha mdomo Dadina venye unajiita wakili? Asante sana.
You want to drive?
Kijana wetu John Cena ameamua hapa basi sasa kupolea maisha ya kawaida. Yeye ni wakili, kwa hivyo anaamuka asubuhi kama wale watu wengine, na kisha hapa basi anaelekea pale kazini na akona kamtoto kwa jina la Kesi. Kesi ni binti yake, na yeye bibi yake anajulikana hapa basi kama vile Jenny Petita. Asante sana Jenny Petita. Jenny Petita. Sasa kuna kakijana fulani kamekuwa kakimchokoza huyu mtoto wake jamaa wetu John Cena. Dadi nikuulize aje, kuna kijana fulani anaitwa Kamonio. Haya, amefanya nini? Imagine alikuwa ananiguza nini? Alikuwa ananiguza kifua. Haya. Unafaa kumgoga vibaya sana. Ni mgoge hata singoinga. Yes, unafaa kumgoga pahali popote atahisi uchungu. Kamonio anakuaga mtu wa tabia baya. Haya. Elewa ni katoto. Sasa kanamwambia babake kila kitu na ambacho basi kinafanyika pale shuleni. Unaona? Olelei. Asante sana. Haya, hii sasa mtazamaji ndio nambo inakuaga routine yake jamaa wetu hapa basi John Cena. Na drop mtoto pale shuleni na kisha timabasi anafika pale kwa ofisi yake. Sasa wakati moja kuna jamaa fulani alikuja kuteta ati kwamba na kwati aliweka airtime kwa line yake, alafu ile airtime ikaisha hata kama hajatumia. Kwa hivyo yule jamaa anataka hapa basi kustaki ile kampuni. Just imagine, ninaweka credit ya 500. Alafu kupigia mtu moja. Nilipigia mtu moja dakika 2 alafu hiyo airtime ikaisha. So nataka tafadhali twende ukanitetee, ukaniwakilisha pale kotini. Wewe ni wakili, nataka twende ukaniwakilisha pale kotini. Ina maana jamaa wetu hapa basi yeye kazi zenye na ambazo anaitiwa. Oi. Ina maana hapa basi ni kazi tu na ambazo ni kazi tu za kawaida. Haya. Sasa jamaa wetu wanashindwa. Atiriri. Yani uweke airtime iishe na sasa unataka kustaki kampuni. Ati airtime yako iliisha. Na kweli watu wanakuaga wamevuta vitu baya. Juu hii hata hatuwezi wekelea kiombidho. Hii ni ngumu kuwekelea kiombidho. Lakini punde si punde kuliweza kukuingilia hapa basi Sebastian L. Sebastian L. Walikuwa na yeye kwa kikosi cha wana Special Forces. Ala! Namna gani manzi? Vipi bana? Sebastian.
Same thing.
Kama pia wewe unajua uliamua kupandisha vioo. Siku hizi hauonekani. Jamaa watu akamwambia sasa unajua mimi hapa basi mimi nakuaga wakili kwa hivyo. Mambo ya kuwakilisha watu pale kotini, watu na ambao basi wako na makesi tofauti, mimi na wawakilisha basi pale kotini. Lakini Sebastian wakati aliweza kufika hapa alimwambia jamaa wetu John Cena, "Vavarai." Yani utoke kwa kikosi cha wana Special Forces. Ukuja kufanya kazi ya wakili. Unataka nifanye nini? Kamwambia kuja nikutembeze. Kumbe mtazamaji, wakati na ambapo hapa basi jamaa wetu aliweza kujiuzuru na kikosi cha wanajeshi, na yeye Sebastian alitengenezaga kikosi chake shasha. Alitengenezaga hapa basi kikosi chake. Kikosi na ambacho hapa basi ni cha Mama Sena shasha.
So what do you think?
Think you need a lawyer?
You know a good one?
Nope.
Huko jamaa wetu anaulizwa, "What do you think?" Anamwambia Sebastian, "I think you need a lawyer." Kwa nini? Mwanzo hizi vitu na ambazo unafanya hapa zinakaa kuwa illegal. Lakini aliambiwa hapana. CDI ni kitu na basi imepitishwa na serikali ya United States of America.
Yes.
Na mimi ni mtu na ambaye huaga anapatiwa kazi hata na serikali ya United States of America. For example, kuna mtu na ambaye hapa basi anasubua kikosi kama vile wana DEA. Na wangetaka auawe na hawataki basi kuweza kuhusika directly, wanakuja wanatukoboa sisi kama wana CDI. Tunaenda na kisha tumebasi tunaangamiza huyo mtu. Ina maana sisi tunafanyaga kazi za kulipwa. We are soldiers, but this time around we work for money. Mwanajeshi akianza kufanya kazi juu ya pesa anaitagwa mercenary. Unaona? Anaitagwa mercenary. Walele yaye. Ala. Na utaona mtazamaji, huyu Sebastian ni jamaa ambaye hapa basi ameweza kujipanga mwanzo. Hii kampuni yake basi ya CDI, utaona hapa basi iko na vifaa zote za vita. Kuna chopa, kuna vifaru na kuna vitu kama hizo. Kwa hivyo aliweza kumwambia jamaa wetu John Cena, sababu ya kukuleta area zenye hizi ni kisa na maana hapa basi nataka ufanye kazi na wana CDI. Lakini jamaa wetu akadai I'm retired, man.
I'm too old to go running around the world, Sam. I got a life here. Mason, I know you. You're miserable. That's not the point.
I am retired, manzi. Na already tayari nimeshaanza maisha ya kawaida, kukaaga na mtoto, kumpelekaga shuleni, kumwendea akitoka shuleni, kwenda kutetea watu kotini. Na maana hapa basi niko na maisha. Lakini aliambiwa na Sebastian, Vavarai, you are a soldier. Kuna kibarua na ambacho basi kimeweza kutokea. Kuna manze namba hapa basi anakuaga reporter. Ina maana hapa basi ni manze namba basi ni mwanahabari kwa jina la Claire Wellington. Na Claire Wellington anaenda hapa basi kufanya president wa Paldonia interview. Unaona? Anaenda kufanya interview na president wa Paldonia. Na sasa kuna hitajika na bodyguard wa kuweza kumprotect hapa basi yule Claire Wellington. Unaona? Wa kuweza kumprotect hapa basi mtazamaji yule manze basi kwa jina Claire Wellington. Sasa jamaa wetu akafahamishwa kuna kibarua na ambacho kimetokea. Uandamane na manze hadi kule upande wa Paldonia, uhakikishe kwamba na kweti manze ako sawa na ako uhai. Ina maana kazi yako ni kuweza kumprotect huyo manze basi kwa jina Claire Wellington.
You don't have to tell.
Lakini mtazamaji, jamaa wetu wanamkumbuka vizuri sana yule president wa Paldonia, Joan Vanegas. Joan Vanegas aliangamizaka kikosi chake jamaa wetu John Cena. Hadi Sebastian akamwambia, Vavarai, najua uko na machungu sana basi na Joan Vanegas. Najua uko na machungu sana basi na Joan Vanegas, kisa na maana hapa basi iliweza kuangamiza hapa basi watu wa kikosi chako. Lakini kuna kazi na ambayo imetokea. Wewe uandamane na huyo manze basi kwa jina la Claire Wellington.
20 grand says you are.
Aende afanye interview na president wa Paldonia kwa jina la Joan Vanegas. Claire Wellington. Claire Wellington alikuwa hapa basi investigative journalist. Unaona? Alikuwa hapa basi investigative journalist, lakini wakati moja akafanya story ikawa kwamba na kwa ile story mtazamaji haikuwa ya ukweli. Unaona? Nikisema investigative journalist nasema mtu kama vile Jichopevu ama John Alan Namu. Unaona? Watu kama hao. Investigative journalist. Wakati mmoja aliweza kufanya hapa basi story ikawa kwamba na kwa sio ya ukweli. Kwa hivyo ikabidi manzi wetu ajiuzuru. Unaona? Aweze kujiuzuru. Sasa yeye anafanyaga hapa basi interview. Unaona? Anafanyaga ma interview kwa channel yake ya YouTube. Sana anafanyaga interview na maserebs. Asante sana. Maridadi. Sasa juu ya ule mkutano kubwa aliweza kuchelewa na bibi yake huwaga anampeleka tisa nunge cheki.
Whatever this is, it's gone, it's done. I can't do it anymore, Mason. I can't.
Jenny, don't overreact.
I'm not overreacting. I think it might be best for everybody if you did move out. Never mind, I'll get Casey. I'll go to my mom's.
No.
Na bali na kuwa hapa basi wanaishi pamoja, bali na kuwa kwamba na kwa jamaa wetu John Cena anaishi pamoja basi na familia yake, hawaja kuwa wakisikizana na huyu mke wake. Unaona? Hawaja kuwa wakisikizana hapa basi na huyu mke wake. Mwanzo bibi yake jamaa wetu John Cena anataka jamaa wetu John Cena akuage available kila wakati na ambapo hapa basi anamhitaji. Na inawa mtazamaji, hakuna kitu huwaga na yani kinasinya mwanaume. Hakuna kitu na ambacho huwaga kinasinya mwanaume kama kushinda hapa barashika basi ukitafutwa kila wakati. Weko unafanya nini, uko na akina nani, kwa nini haukuja nyumbani, mbona umechelewa, kwa nini haujafika? Sasa jamaa wetu John Cena aliweza kuchukua hapa barashika basi virago zake na akaambia bibi yake, barara tukaanishe na wewe hapa tukoseana heshima, mimi nimeenda kufanya job.
Private security, easy stuff.
Mason, no. That part of your life is over.
Lakini mtazamaji, bibi yake anamwambia hapana, ushajiuzuru na kikosi cha wanajeshi, kwa nini uende